All right, it is April 27th. It is 8:30 a.m. and I will bring the meeting to order. We have an agenda before, or we need a little time yet? No, we're good. Okay. We have an agenda before us. Are there any additions, deletions to that agenda? Doesn't look like it. Councillor Christie.
I'll move the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to move the agenda as presented. All those in favor? Any opposed? Oh, okay, everybody's in favor. Unanimous. We have circulated the minutes of the April 13th meeting. Is there any errors or omissions to those minutes? If not, Councillor King.
I'd make the motion to approve the April 13th meeting minutes as presented.
All right, I have a motion to move the minutes as presented. All those in favor? And that is unanimous. Our first agenda item will be a delegation, BDO Canada. Mr. Lister, Mr. Kennedy.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
So that time of year again, I guess. Again, another virtual meeting in the COVID world we live in. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through the financial statements kind of at a high level. I'm just going to go over the audit report here quickly, and then Mitch is going to kind of jump into the numbers a bit, and he will just kind of look at changes from last year, budget, things like that. But we just basically encourage you guys to jump in anytime. If you have questions, then we can sort of dive deeper into them. They're fairly lengthy statements. We do things at a high level, but by all means, jump in if you've got questions. So I don't know if we've got the statements up on the screen. Let's start with the auditor's report itself, or has everybody got their package, I guess?
Yes.
Okay, so in the first part there, the independent auditor's report. It's a 2-pager. The biggest part is that first part is that opinion. And basically this is a clean opinion. And what that means is that it is in accordance with public sector accounting standards. And then how we form that opinion is the basis of opinion. We use generally accepted auditing standards that basically allow us to form that opinion or do the work to form that opinion. The other parts of the report are responsibilities of management and those charged with governance, which is ultimately you guys and gals. And what that means is basically these are your financial statements. We're providing that opinion. We're doing our audit work and basically providing the opinion that they are within those standards. Our audit responsibilities is the next section there, which just kind of outlines what we do. And basically, we're going to look at the risk of material misstatements, or identify and assess the risk of material misstatements in the financial statements. We're going to obtain a sufficient audit evidence to look at those risks and statements, potential misstatements, understand the internal controls, look at the accounting policies, make sure they're reasonable, look at the going concern of Kneehill, Kneehill County, and look at the overall presentation of the consolidated financial statements, and then basically just obtain sufficient evidence to form that opinion. Is there any questions on the audit report itself, I guess, before we kind of jump into the question or jump into the actual numbers and financial statements?
Anyone have questions for Mr. Lister at this time? Oh, looks like you've covered it, Alan.
Awesome. Okay, so Mitch is going to come up now, and he's going to basically go through the actual financials and look at the numbers. Like I said, I encourage you guys just to jump in and ask questions.
All right, hopefully you guys can hear me. Is my mic on?
Yes, you're coming in here.
Perfect. All right, so I don't know if you guys can see me or not. Maybe that's to your benefit if you can't, but otherwise we'll just go through the statement of financial position here. So I'm gonna essentially do a current year to prior year comparative, and then I'm gonna highlight some of the changes from current year to prior year. And kind of like Alan said, if you guys have any questions as I go, feel free to stop me. Otherwise, I'm just gonna continue going through the rest of the statements. So starting with your financial position here in your cash is down about $6 million. We'll talk about that more once I get to the statement of cash flow. Your taxes receivable is slightly up in the year, which is just attributed to amounts just not being paid down. Then your accounts receivable is up about $4 million from the prior year. That's mostly due to grants that are currently sitting there. So like you have MSI in there for about $2.2 million. You have your gas tax amounts and your STIP grants in there as well. So that's going to make up the $4 million swing. Moving further down to your liabilities, your AP is currently up about $2 million. That's mostly due to holdbacks to two different organizations. Moving further down, you'll see the employee benefit obligation. Your employee benefit obligation is just going to be your early retirement, your sick time accrual, and your vacation accrual. I'll refer to deferred revenue when we get to note 6 further along in the presentation here. And so your net financial position has changed about $6.5 million from the prior year. I can get you guys to go to the page 4, which is the statement of operations. I can kind of run down budget to actual. So when looking at the statement of operations, you should probably focus on your 2020 budget that was set out and compare it to your 2020 actuals. If there's any variances between what the budget and the actual is, then you kind of want to look at your 2019 prior year numbers to see if that makes sense. So from a very high level here, we can see your total revenue in the year that you budgeted for was $26.9 million. Your actual revenue in the year is about 27.45. So there's going to be slight changes due to tax amounts, your operating grants and your capital grants are going to cause a little bit of a swing here. And then moving further down to your expenditures, you can see your expenditures is about 33.6 is what you guys had budgeted at. Your actual expenses were quite lower at 28.6, and the reason for that swing is going to be mostly due to your transportation, where you guys had budgeted about $18.2 million in transportation, where you only incurred about 12.5, and that makes up your difference between budget to actual. And then further down, you guys had budgeted for your capital grant revenue of about $7.6 million for capital projects, but you guys only actually recognized about 1.4. So your total excess of revenue over expenditures is about $250,000 at the end of December 31st. I can get you guys to move to the next page, which is your statement of change in net financial assets. Our starting point here is going to be the number that comes at the bottom of your statement of operations, which is your excess of revenue over expenditures of $250,000. And then we subtract your acquisition of TCA, add back your amortization, take the net loss on the sale of tangible capital assets, and then your proceeds of about $1 million on the sale of your capital assets. And then moving further down, there's the purchase inventory for consumption, which is your gravel, and then the use of inventory for consumption, which is your gravel as well. And so your net change in your net financial assets is going to be about $6.5 million, as we discussed earlier. So your ending net financial assets at the end of the year is about $46.8 million. Okay, moving to the statement of cash flows. Once again, we're going to be starting with the number from the statement of our operations of $250,000. This is just to highlight kind of the movement of your cash throughout the year, kind of where it went. And so starting with your excess of revenue over expenditures of $250,000, we then have to add the non-cash items that are included in that excess of revenue over expenditure, such as your amortization of about $6 million. And then we move further down to the changes in non-cash operating balances. So these changes are essentially just taking the changes in your assets and liabilities and either adding them or deducting them as they go based off of your 2020 to 2019 numbers. So if your assets went up from the prior year, it means your assets are going to have a negative value. If your liabilities go up from the prior year, it means your cash flow is going to go up as well. So the big numbers here is going to be your accounts receivable, about $4 million. That's going to be your grants that we discussed earlier. And then there's the AP and the accrued liabilities, which is your holdbacks of $1.9 million. And then there's your inventory for consumption, which is the difference between your inventory purchased and your inventory consumed of about 2.5. And then the change in your deferred revenue, about $2.5 million. You move further down, there's about $11.5 million spent on the acquisition of capital assets, and which you received $1 million through the sale of some of the capital assets you no longer needed. And so your ending cash balance at the end of the year is going to be $45.5 million. Of that amount, $2 million of that is restricted, which leaves you with about $43.5 million in unrestricted cash at the end of the year. Okay. If I can get you guys to go to note 1, which is on page 10. So your cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year is the $45.5 million. And as I was discussing earlier in the statement of cash flows, of your restricted cash amounts of about $1.92 million, it's made up of mostly your MSI amounts, and then you have municipal operating support transfers of $128,000. These are amounts that you currently have restricted for use. Okay, if I can get you guys to move to page 12, and then we can kind of go through the deferred revenue note really quickly. So your opening balances for your deferred revenue was about $3.1 million. That's going to be made up of your MSI capital, your federal gas tax fund, and your MSI operating for 141. So in 2020, the amount of money that you guys have received was about $4.7 million. Of that $4.7 million and your opening balances of 3.1, you had recognized or spent $2.2 million, which leaves you with an ending balance in your deferred revenue of about 5.7 for future use. Okay. If I can get you guys to move to page 17, which is note 12, and we can talk about your accumulated surplus. So your accumulated surplus is essentially calculated by taking your unrestricted reserves plus your restricted reserves plus your equity in TCA, and that's going to equal your ending accumulated surplus. And so basically we just take your equity in TCA balance of about $117 million, and then we add in equity and other non-financial assets of about 8.4. And then we take your unrestricted surplus, which is your current funds that you have earned that are not restricted for use. And then we take your restricted reserve amounts of about $12.6 million in your operating reserves, plus your $32 million in your capital reserves, for a total reserve of about $44.7 million. You add all those together, it's going to get you your ending accumulated surplus of $172 million. If you guys just want to flip to the next page, I can talk about that a little bit more. So this is kind of just an addition to your note 12 there. And so the key thing that I want to highlight on your change in accumulated surplus is just your restricted reserves, which is your second column there. So your ending balance for your restricted reserves at the end of the year is about $44.7 million. And so that's currently projects that you have set aside for future spending. And so of your $44.7 million that's currently sitting in your restricted reserves, you currently have $45 million in cash, 43 of which is not restricted. And then you have about $13 million in accounts receivable, which leaves you with an ending current asset, liquidatable assets of about $56 million. Which basically means you have your reserves fully funded currently. And so that's a good sign. It means you guys are in good financial shape right now. Okay. If I can get you guys to move to page 20, note 16, which is your expenses by object. So expenses by object, this is just another way of looking at your expenses that show up on your statement of operations. So your statement of operations expenses are shown more by the department, where this gives you a more clear breakdown of what the actual expenses were that were incurred in the year by department. And so you're going to kind of see the swing from the actual object type instead of the department. So once again, there's your budgeted expenses of about $33.6 million, where your total expenses in the year, your actuals were 28.6. So some of the swings you can see is on the contracted and general services side, a little bit lower on the materials, goods, and utilities. But yeah, it's just a different view that some people like. So if I can get you guys to go to page 21, we can go over the debt limits. So your debt limits are, it's essentially a calculation that's driven by the MGA, which basically takes your total operating revenue in the year, and then it multiplies it by a formula of $1.5 million. And so what this formula basically tells you is this is the recommended cap or ceiling of the total debt that the municipality can take on as at the end of the year. And once again, I want to highlight that this fluctuates based off of your capital, or sorry, your operating revenue in the year, not your capital. So your total debt available at the end of 2020 is going to be the $41.2 million. And then there's your debt servicing limit, which is also driven by a calculation. It's literally taking your operating revenue and multiplying it by 25%. So the debt servicing limit is the amount of debt that you can actually service in a single year, which means that you can service approximately $6.8 million in debt throughout the year. So these are recommendations. They're not hard rules. So if you ever want to go above your actual debt limits, you can do so by contacting Municipal Affairs and getting their approval. And the last thing I kind of want to talk about here is note 22, which is your budget note. So this is just to kind of show kind of how we get to your excess of revenue over expenditures at the end of the year of the $955,000. So if we look at your second from the right column, your budget per financial statements, your total revenue budgeted for the year, which is made up of your revenue and your transfers for capital, is about $34.5 million. And then we take your total expenditures that you had budgeted in the year of about $33.6 million. And then the total excess of revenue over expenditures that was budgeted for, once again, as per the statement of operations, is $955,000. And the furthest column from the right is your actual. So it's just your 955 over to your 248. And then we look at your reconciling items to see the differences that are going to cause you to net out to zero here. So your reconciling items of your proceeds on disposal of capital of $678,000, your capital expenditures, your interfund transfers of about $16 million, and then your amortization add back of about $6 million. And that nets you out to your zero revenue over expenditures from your budgeted per financial statements. That's all I got. You guys have any questions at all?
Are there any questions from council?
I do have a 5-year financial statement analytic that I'd like to kind of run through with council. It'll just kind of give you guys a snapshot of where you guys have moved from today from where you were in 2016. I'm not sure if you guys have a copy of it in front of you.
I don't. Councillor Christie.
Just a quick question. The land held for sale is just the quarter at Sundre for gravel? More of an administration question than a financial question.
It's, if I could, Mitch, yes, it's predominantly that, but there are another 10 or 15 smaller parcels. Yep, that's.
Deputy Reeve McGee.
I'm sorry, I could not hear you very well. Could you tell me that again?
Yes, the substantive part of that land held for sale is the parcel close to Sundre that was acquired for a gravel pit. So again, that council's deemed that to be surplus, and it's being held for resale.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll move on with Mitch or Alan. I'm not sure who's gonna.
I was just gonna run you guys through the 5-year analytics, but I'm not sure if you guys have a copy in front of you. I
If you
could
give
share
us-
my screen.
Give us 10 seconds, Mitch, and we'll throw it on the screen.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Are there any other questions on the statements while we're waiting? Guys are making it way too easy for us.
We're just waiting for those 5-year comparisons
Awesome.
to come up.
Yep, no worries.
Okay, we've got them up on screen.
Perfect. All right. So I'm gonna essentially highlight kind of how your 5 years have kind of gone here from your more significant changes and things that are kind of remaining fairly consistent here. So I'm gonna start with your statement of financial position. And so we're gonna kind of look at your cash balances throughout the year versus your short-term investments. So in 2020 and 2019, you can kind of see that your cash balances were quite significant in comparison to your previous 3 years. And that's mostly just due to the movement of your short-term investments, where in 2018, 2017, 2016, you had your short-term investments, but in 2019 and 2020, you didn't have any at all. So your short-term investments are just liquidated and sitting in your cash account right now. And then looking at your taxes receivable, we can see that there's quite a significant jump from 2018. These are mostly due to your outstanding amounts over the past couple of years. I think most of those are due to corporate amounts. And then there's your accounts receivable, which we had discussed earlier, which is going to be mostly made up of like your MSI, your federal gas tax amounts, and your STIP grants, which are causing your accounts receivable to be quite significant in 2020. Your previous years have been a little bit lower. And so your land held for resale is fairly consistent over the previous years. It looks like it was added in about 2017. Moving to your liability section here. So your liabilities have remained somewhat fairly consistent over the previous 4 years. This year, there's just a huge jump due to holdbacks due to 2 specific vendors. And then looking at your employee obligation, the reason why your employee benefit obligation looks a little bit different compared to your previous 4 years is because of the early retirement accrual that we added this year. And then looking at your deferred revenues up quite a bit, and that's just going to be mostly due to your accounts receivable change. So your AR is quite high because of your grants receivable, and so just amounts that haven't been spent yet as you're still waiting for cash to come in to work on those projects. So your overall net financial position over the previous 5 years, starting from 2016 going all the way up, you can kind of see that your accumulated surplus has kind of been going up every single year, which is a good sign because it just means that you're becoming a bigger municipality, more or less. Okay, if we can move to our statement of operations. Just doing a quick 5-year here, you can see your net municipal taxes are relatively going to be fairly consistent. This is just going to be a mixture of your tax revenue less your requisitions in the year. So no real surprise on that side of things. Then your government transfers for operating, those are just your operating grants that you received in the year. So your operating grants are getting less and less every year, it appears, except for 2016. In 2017, you guys had spent a lot, at which point it's slowly started to dwindle down to be less and less every year. User fee revenue is pretty consistent. If we look at your investment income, that's kind of one that we should be looking at because we see a little bit of a drop compared to last year, and that's just because we don't have anything. We have like $45,000 sitting in cash. None of it's currently sitting in investments, which is causing a little bit of a swing there in terms of investment income. But that just could be due to you guys holding on to cash for future projects to make sure it's readily available. And then moving further down to the expense side, we see that your admin and assessment is up to $7.9 million, when historically it's been relatively around the $5 million mark the previous 4 years. Your protection services is slightly up, but not too significant at 1.9 compared to about your 1.2 to 1.4. So before your capital your capital grant revenue, your excess of revenue over expenditures is about $1.2 million in a loss position. But then we take in your government transfers for capital, which is your capital grant revenue of $1.4 million, plus contributed assets, which are capital assets that were gifted to you in the year, for an excess of revenue over expenditures of $250,000. Compared to historical values, which were quite significant at 4.3 to 4.7 to 7 million. But overall, your accumulated surplus is going up in the year. It's not going down, which is a good sign. So, you guys have any questions on the 5-year? Okay.
Looks like there's no questions, Mitch.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you guys could hear me or not.
Yeah.
That's good now.
That was good news, so we can hear you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
perfect.
All right, as if there's no other questions, I guess we'll sign off for now.
Councillor Christie has a question.
I just have a
Awesome.
question. On the consumable inventory, that puts that new gravel in at cost, not really at the market value, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
These financial statements are all on a cost basis. There's no real fair market value type of adjustments.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions.
Awesome. All right, everyone's a little sleepy this morning, maybe.
Okay, well, thank you, Alan. Thank you, Mitch.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for your time, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to thank the team there as well. I know in the COVID world, it's always difficult to coordinate things, but we really appreciate the patience and the help with the audit this year. So.
Yeah, especially Bill and Marika. I don't know if Marika's here listening in, but they're both a huge help. And Mike was easily available to talk to as well, so I appreciate the help from those three. So.
Okay, well, thanks for the shout outs.
Awesome. All right, everybody, have a great day. Enjoy the sun.
Well, we will from inside the office building here, so.
That's right.
You guys enjoy the sun over your way too. Thank you very much for coming in, and stay safe, you guys.
Yeah, you guys too.
Thanks.
Have a good day.
Alrighty. Our next agenda item will be 4.1. And Municipal Energy Champions Program, and who's taking this one? Lori. Okay, anytime you're ready, Ms. Watt.
Good morning, Council. So I bring to you an update on our Municipal Energy Champions Program this morning. The Municipal Energy Champions Program supports municipalities by providing free capacity building support for developing, managing, and implementing energy management initiatives. Kneehill County is one of 9 municipalities in our province selected to participate in this program in 2021. Participating in this program helps municipalities understand the importance of energy use and management, better track and manage municipal energy consumption, move forward in the energy planning process, see financial options to offset the costs of energy projects, learn to identify opportunities for energy efficiency and renewable energy projects, and develop an approach for energy management initiatives. Participating municipalities in this round for 2021 include the towns of Innisfail, Rocky Mountain House, Slave Lake, Westlock, the villages of Linden and Longview, and the Municipal District of Peace number 135, as well as us, Kneehill County. So financial implications, cost of the program is free for participating municipalities, although in-kind contributions are approximately 10 hours per month for 6 months. It is anticipated findings from the program will result in reduced energy costs at various buildings and facilities for our municipality. So today, this is just an update. When the program does conclude, we'll bring you a few more findings. I'm going to turn it over to Jason right now, our building and facilities technician. He's the one that is tasked with the 10 hours per month to walk us through this program, and he'll give you some highlights.
Welcome, Jason.
Thank you, Lori. Good morning, Council. Okay, so as Lori was saying, I'm here to give you guys a quick overview of the Municipal Climate Change Action Center's Municipal Energy Champions program. And I'm going to go over some of the interesting information and misconceptions, some of the early findings that we found. And then at the end, I'm going to go over a review of our solar project here on the administration building with some of the power production numbers and lessons learned on that project. So some of our expectations entering into this program were an increased understanding of energy use and costs, help with data collection, obtaining historical data and understanding and presenting it, and identifying wasteful practices, high consumption areas, easy win projects that we can go after right away, and larger scale future projects that we can bring to you guys. So we're asked now and then about the differences between the Municipal Climate Change Action Center versus the Alberta Urban Municipality Association. And this program through the MCCAC is geared towards just introducing municipalities to energy management and identifying projects, whereas programs through the AUMA are more geared towards the planning and financing of these identified projects, linking industry with municipalities. So some interesting information and misconceptions that we found. On the top left, emission intensity of electricity. I thought that the emission intensity of solar was much greater because of the manufacturing costs, but even when you include emissions created when a panel is built and recycled at the end of its life, it's still a fraction of the emissions per kilowatt hour of even natural gas. On the bottom left there, renewable energy potential maps, Kneehill County is perfectly situated for both solar and wind power production. One of the best places in Canada and one of the better places in the world. And on the right, electricity consumption by end use. It's interesting to see here how lighting consumes more power by the end user than heating, air conditioning, refrigeration, and even all of our office equipment here combined. This is one of the reasons why lighting retrofits can be so cost effective. So some of our early findings. Both these graphs are for electrical consumption in 2020. On the left is the new reservoir we just had built, and on the right is the maintenance shop. For the new reservoir, this shows how increased consumption does not proportionately affect costs. In some situations, even a 50% reduction wouldn't lead to considerable cost savings. Whereas on the right at the maintenance shop, that shows how a high use, high consumption building, consumption more directly affects costs and it's more easily reduced as well. So an example of that would be 2/5 of our consumption in that building is lighting, and it has not been retrofitted yet. We could reduce that portion of consumption by 40% with an LED retrofit. So another thing to keep in mind is because of the way that power is billed, on average, a 20% reduction in consumption only leads to about a 13% cost savings. On a building like the reservoir, it would be less. On a building like the maintenance shop, that would be more. And learnings from electrical consumption also can apply directly to natural gas as well. I also really want to stress savings now can really lead to greater savings in the future because of the rising costs of both the energy and the cost to pollute. So I'm going to move on to our administration solar panel installation. This graph here is displayed in megawatt hours by month over 5 years. So on this graph here, you'll see some of our lower energy production in the winter months due to lower light levels. The lifetime energy produced by this installation currently is at 120 megawatt hours, and at 6 cents, we've recouped roughly $7,200 so far, and we hope to get about 25 years of life out of this system. With this system, we've saved 47,000 kilograms of CO2 emissions, and this is the equivalent of what would be sequestered by planting about 1,400 trees. So it's pretty substantial. And some of our lessons learned. This is the monthly solar energy production just for 2020. And while the pitch of these panels does not allow for a proper snow shed, we should have better production in the winter months. They were mounted at the pitch that they were because that was all the engineering of the roof would allow for on this installation. So we were stuck with that, but you see pretty poor performance in November, December there. And proper care and maintenance of these panels and inverters makes a difference. So keeping them clean, basically, you can see an increase in production the last time we did that in June. So that's it, guys. Is there any questions about the MEC program or the solar project information I've presented?
Who's promoting or initiating this program? Is it the province or the feds or?
Yeah, like it's the Municipal Energy Champions program is run through the Municipal Climate Change Action Center.
So that's provincial?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions from council? I've got a question for you, Jason, and I'm not sure if you can answer it, but are we producing close to the amount of energy that we are through the solar panels that we're using?
No, the building is definitely using more energy than what the solar panels are producing. But
and that's because of the winter months where there's no production, roughly, basically.
This building is large, consumes a lot of power. And the installation would have to be roughly 3 times the size to cover the full power of this building. It's also hard to calculate because of the difference between the energy that we produce at a certain time versus the energy that we're using at a certain time. It's one of the benefits of having this tied into the electrical grid. But when this installation was installed, they were looking more at the payback of the system over the life of the system, rather than covering the entire energy usage of the building.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Does council have any other questions? Well, it doesn't look that way, so thank you for your report.
Yeah, thank you guys very much for your time.
So it's council's wishes here. Councillor King?
I'd make the motion that we accept the Municipal Energy Champions Program Participation Report as information.
Okay, we have a motion to receive for information. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. Call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. We will now move on to 4.2, gravel crushing report. Welcome, Mr. Buchert. At any time you're ready, Brad.
Morning, Mr. Reeve, members of council. Bringing you this morning 4.2. Council receives the information from the transportation report regarding the gravel crushing operation. 2021 operating budget, council approved gravel crushing at a cost of $700,000. Administration estimated that would allow us to stockpile approximately 150,000 tons. The tender opening was held on the 30th of March, and there was 11 bids at an average cost of $411 per ton. Kneehill County accepted the Lone Pine Crushing Limited bid at $2.94 per ton. This allowed administration, or this is based on the criteria of the lowest cost, appropriate equipment, and adequate references done. Decision was accepting Lone Pine Crushing bid at $294, and this allowed administration to crush approximately 238,000 tons rather than the estimate of 150,000 tons. This will allow us to stay within budget while stockpiling additional road crushed gravel. So what we're looking for, this was just basically information. We'd like to stick with that budget of 700,000 each year as prices fluctuate. This year we've seen great pricing for the municipality on projects. So next year we may fall more into that average. It's unknown right now, but even at 411, we would still be able to crush approximately 170,000 tons more than our anticipated 150. So.
Any pictures?
There is a video we have, if Carolyn wants to bring it up. So this was taken last Saturday. So as you can see, the pit is starting to fill up. It's a better view now of what that pit's water is going to look like. The black dirt basically is the outline of where the elevation of water will end up. So it's still got a ways to go to come up to the bank. In the south end, that's in the southeast of 16 of the Valley View Hutterite colony, it's approximately about 6 meters deep right now. So it's still got another 5 or 6 to go. It's filling from the north. The springs in the north feed to the south. We've laid an outline of kind of large boulders along the edge of where the pit or the gravel pit operation is right now for crushing. The stuff to the west was where we mined out and then reclaimed that back to topsoil. So the Hutterites will be able to farm that again into hay. And I don't know if you can really see, there's a fence line that goes on that far end, kind of cuts off where our property is in the northeast of 16. It's kind of hard to see. It's, where's that? Go down a little bit. Right, wow, come down a little, come straight down smart, straight down. Fence line's approximately, well, come down a little more. Right in there, there's a fence that crosses east-west. That property to the north is all part of our 80 acres of the northeast of 16. And then the Hutterites have the southeast of 16 portion to hay. So that's all been seeded back, reclaimed. Rocks were picked, and we're just waiting for the water to fill up. So
where's the beach?
So that pile of gravel there, when we crushed, we wanted to try out some 225 base gravel. It's more a manufactured fine gravel under a 420 or under a 20 size gravel. So that's about approximately 25,000 ton there crushed already. He is now crushing the 420 road crush gravel, which will probably end up getting 210,000 tons.
So that water is fed from water table.
Water table springs within the gravel pit. Like I said, it feeds from the northeast 16 and then feeds into the southeast 16, so.
Okay, so there is no connection to the creek whatsoever.
Yes, there is. They do have hydraulically connected, yeah.
Oh, okay, so that's where the carp are gonna come in from.
Yeah. The water's aqua blue, almost like the mountains, so gravel,
Okay.
sand cleans it nicely. so.
Councillor Keever,
So when you start crushing, Brad, where are you gonna find the room to put the crushed stuff?
It's gonna go right in between the pile, the current pile that's there, and that 225, yeah. There's enough room there, and then we'll be hauling that out in the winter to go to other places, so. The advantage of, being able to crush 200,000, we use roughly, 125 to 130,000 a year. That'll set us up nice to stockpile into the south areas with some really good gravel. We still got a fair amount left at the Barris stockpile north of Carbon. I think there's approximately 70,000 ton of our last people's trucking contract approximately there, but it is getting spread out throughout that Division 1, 2 area and Division 5, so.
Councillor Christie,
What was the final tonnage of the pit run?
So final tonnage over there, we didn't get as much out on that west side as we were hoping. It was still substantial, but not where we were thinking. We ended up at 996,500 cubic meters of pit run, which we equate at 1.83 million tons. So currently on the 225, which is a manufactured fine, we're at about an 8% elimination, and we're in the worst part of the gravel. That south end had more sand and fines in it. So at 8%, if we used 8% across the board, we'd only be eliminating about 144,000 ton out of that whole pile. But we know as we go farther north into the pile, it's very clean rock. We will have a hard time probably hitting 3%, so, which is good, because that's gonna equates to roughly about 13 years worth of road crush, so. The fines will be used, they're gonna be great, because we won't have to buy sand anymore for our road sand. So we'll be using that for our road sand. We use fines on some of the dirt trails when we shape them up a bit, just to give them some extra life, so.
are there any other questions from council to Mr. Buchert?
Finished cost of the crushed gravel now is gonna be in that $7, not quite.
We haven't got all the invoices in yet. So we'll be quite a bit less than $7. We'll be under 6, I think, so.
And market value?
Market, no. Like, we never cost everything at market value, because we're not here to make a profit, right? So, again, we're looking, at $294 a ton for crushing, and, we're under $3 for mining excavation of the original pit run. So, which is, a fairly good price. Market value, I mean, according to what we got for tenders as far as crushing, is saying $411 is more market value of what that tonnage is to crush, so. I know the contractor that got it, he just got some contracts in Saskatchewan at double the rate of what we're paying for, so.
Anyone got any questions for Mr. Buchert? If not, Deputy Reeve McGee.
I'd like to move that we receive the transportation report regarding gravel crushing operations as information.
Alrighty, we've got a motion before us to receive for information. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing as not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Our next agenda item, cost sharing for the development, Mr. Buchert, 4.3.
All right, agenda 4.3 is cost sharing for development of undeveloped road allowance, Range Road 22-4. So, little background on this one, June of 2017, the applicant applied for a cost shared road development to upgrade Range Road 22-4 to access their subdivided parcel situated out of the northwest of 162822. Council approved the road development with cost share to be considered at the time of a single-family residence development. A contractor was hired by Kneehill County to complete the road development in 2017. So at the time of the application, Kneehill County policy allowed consideration for the cost sharing of 50% of the road upgrade when a development permit was applied for. Policy 513 and 513A that were in effect at the time, but are now replaced with policy 1339. Both are attached for reference. In June of 17, the applicant applied for a residential development permit. Oh, sorry, that is incorrect. So recently, in the last month, the applicant just applied for his residential development permit, and now would like to be considered for the cost sharing of the roadway. The applicant paid Kneehill County a total of $13,000 to upgrade the road. Therefore, the county's 50% cost share would be $6,500 with funds coming from the operating budget. This is similar to one last year we did for another applicant that we did a road the exact same time, and council did pass that motion of paying them when they applied for their permit. So council options would be council approve the $6,500 cost share with funds coming from operating expenses. Council receive for information and not fund the cost share of the road upgrade. Council direct administration to provide further information.
Are there any questions for Mr. Buchert? When was the road built, Brad?
So the road was built in 2017. They applied here last month to the development planning department there to build their residence now. And that's when we had put that stipulation on it. If you're going to want this road upgrade, we want it tied to the development permit. So now they've decided to construct their home, so.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Any questions from council? Deputy Reeve McGee.
I'd like to move that we approve 50% cost sharing with the owner and developer, Brian First, in the amount of $6,500 for the development of the undeveloped road allowance on Range Road 2020-4 to access a subdivided parcel situated out of the northwest 162822 west of 4, with funds coming from the operating budget.
Okay, we have a motion before us. It's presented on screen. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing as not, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
At this point in time, I will call a recess. Back in a few. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. McKiernan, and anytime you are ready.
All right, good morning, Reeve, members of council. This morning, item 5.21 is in regards to the resident engagement results for Three Hills East Water that was performed by administration. So through motion 395/2020, council directed administration to engage with the residents within the defined area east of Three Hills to gauge the interest in a municipal water supply system. Kneehill County developed and distributed a survey consisting of 5 questions with the option of providing any additional comments. The survey was mailed to the targeted residents on March 12th, and it was requested that surveys be returned by March 26th. Residents were also given the opportunity to return the survey by regular mail or electronically. So a PowerPoint presentation has been prepared to present the results of the survey. A total of 79 surveys were sent out, and a total of 37 surveys were returned, either by mail or electronically. 4 of those surveys returned did identify additional properties that were to be considered under this, inside this area. These additional locations I just mentioned were within those defined areas and were included with the results of question 1. So we can jump into the PowerPoint presentation. And if you have any questions, we can answer them through, or we can wait till the end. So again, just to kind of go through, so through the motion of council, administration engaged with the residents in that defined area east of Three Hills to gauge the interest. As I said, we developed a survey of 5 questions and an opportunity for any additional comments. I'll move on to the next one since we've covered that one just recently. So the results, so this is the total. So like I said, 79 surveys were delivered, were mailed out. We had 37 surveys returned, which work out to 46.8 return rate. As I mentioned, 4 of those surveys had multiple locations identified. So the total number of separate locations were 43. And that is important for question number 1. As I said, the results for question 1, I used all those locations. Other ones I couldn't, so I just used question 1. So I'll just kind of explain why that actually happened. So when we were sending out the surveys, there was a lot of multiple names. So in order to avoid any errors, it was decided that I would just send out ones singularly, just in case those names came out outside of the defined area or that kind of thing. So just to eliminate any errors, I just went with the single name and not did the duplicate names. So that's the reason for that. So.
Okay, so John, what you're saying is there could be multiple residences on?
No, so for example, Reef, we had one person return one with two extra land locations on, because they actually were the owners of another resident within that area. So I was just trying to make sure that I didn't have the error that I was maybe targeting one of the residents they may have owned outside of that area. But there was a few where they did say, no, I have this house here, and this house here. So those houses I included in the results of question 1.
Okay, so they're not bare land subdivisions?
They're not bare land, there's actually a house there.
There is
yeah.
resident, okay. Yeah. Good, thank you.
So the next slide is actually the question number 1. And so the question was, are you interested in receiving a connection to a regional potable water system? And again, this is based off of the 43 locations that were identified, not the 39 that were returned to us, or was it 39? 37 that were returned to us. So this one is a little bit different from the other questions. So the results were in favor of yes at 69.8%, no 23.3%, and maybe was 6.9. So on that left side there, that's the actual number of yeses and nos. So there was 30 yeses, 10 nos, and 3 maybes out of the 43. And just to kind of give maybe wasn't actually a response. that was offered, so that was written in. So we had yes or no, and they wrote in maybe, so I just wanted to make note of that as well. So question number 2, and just on that maybe, I think maybe because there was some comments and you'll see them later, and I think maybe because they didn't think they had enough information to make that choice, that decision right now. So question number 2, a previously constructed regional water systems have potential flow of 4 imperial gallons per minute at 40 PSI, satisfactory for household use. If you chose to connect, would your connection be for household use or agricultural use? And again, you can see the results there. So household only was 13, agriculture only, it was 0. Both was the higher response at 18, and some people chose not to answer that question, so that was 6. So question number 3 was, would you utilize a water bulk fill station if constructed at the reservoir site? And it was just in parentheses there was reservoir site would be constructed within the water system area. So wherever we constructed that reservoir, like our other systems, we would include the bulk water station there. So again, the results were yes, 14 people said yes, no was 9, maybe was 12, and no answer was 2. So probably the one that, one question that a lot of people probably had the most questions about, I guess, was past water system projects required a monetary contribution from residents to connect to the system. And the total dollar amount required for the connection could be influenced by the overall cost to construct the system. The current fee to connect to an existing rural water system in Kneehill County is $10,000. So the first part of this question was, A, would you be willing to pay a fee to connect to the regional water system? So the majority of people did say yes. So 25 respondents said yes. No was 8, undecided was 1, and no answer was 3. So this one you have to also think about how many people replied as no, that they wanted to connect to the water system, because that would influence this one as well, right? Obviously, if they don't want it, they don't want to pay, right? So the second part of this one was B, should the cost to connect to the regional water system increase, would you be willing to pay a greater amount than that current fee of $10,000? And this was the results, 10 people, so 27% said yes. 21% of the people, 56.8, said no. Some people were undecided, and some people did not answer. So our final question was, has your current water supply system or water quality limited your potential residential or agricultural growth? So we had responses were yes. 8 people responded yes at 21.6%. 26 people responded as no at 70.3%, and there was 3 people that had no answer to that question. So part of the survey, we did let people have room for additional comments. So I have put these comments here for you guys to see. There are a couple that I didn't change the actual wording of anything, but I tried to leave out anything that might identify them. So if they put down like a land location or maybe identified where they could be, I kind of took that out so that they wouldn't be identified through their comments. So, but I did leave the gist of their comments in it, just kind of any identifying thing I took out where I could. So, and they're random too. This isn't in any order, it's just random. So this absolutely not interested was one. Another one was, I strongly support getting this built. The lack of potable and adequate water for the Ghost Pine area has come up for years. Even though there are some serious quality issues that can affect health, no action has been taken. If I had a young family, I would not consider living here. Our well is 330 feet deep and has limited deliverability and is not drinkable quality. Given the geology of the area, drilling a new well is no guarantee of getting water. Several farmers have attempted this over the years, and it was with very costly and mixed outcomes. It's hard to believe that in 2021, many in our farming community do not have access to safe water. The only solution is to finally get a line built out here. Thank you for bringing up this topic again, and I hope council will finally do the right thing. Next, at this time, we have not had any water issues, but if the county water is coming to the area, count me in. Great to know what might happen in the future. We have been asking for a water line for the past 30-plus years. It is time for the residents to have decent potable water. No interest in residential commercial. However, a bulk water station would be very beneficial during spraying. Could we still use our existing cisterns instead of building more reservoirs? I do not need this system because I'm lucky to be by the creek where there's ample supply for our well, but I know there's a lot of people east Ghost Pine who could use this system. Therefore, I would support the system. And then this one, question 4A, would have to think about this more than just a flat yes. Same with question 4B. Question 5, Dad's place on has limited water and growth. Interested in learning more. How much extra to hook up to the house? How much monthly fees would be? More information would have to be provided, example, amortization program / payment program. We have been asking for water for years and years, so feel we should be entitled to water for a similar cost as others who have received water in the county. It is not our fault we have waited this long to get water. So those were all the comments that we received through this survey. Like I said, a lot of them deal with having more information. And in our letter at the survey, we did explain that this was very exploratory and that more information would obviously be given if it went further, like costs, where, all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, right now, that's not anything we can really give them until we have more information, right? So any questions at all on the survey results, or?
Does council have any questions for John? I guess I've got a comment. I'm kind of disappointed that only 47% actually took the time to indulge in the survey. But, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm thinking that there's probably 53% that maybe didn't think it was worth getting water. I don't know. I don't know why they wouldn't fill it out. I guess if they were really interested in it, they would fill it out. But again, I can't speak to that. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, Councilor Hugo.
Yes, good morning. John, has there been any other surveys returned after the March 26th deadline that we haven't included, or was the 37 that you got were the only ones that were returned?
Through the reef, I have included every one that I received. I did receive approximately about, I'm going to guess 4 surveys after the deadline. And I actually, before this was sent out, I made an addition or a correction to it, an edit that included a survey that did come in even later than that. But I did wait until basically this all went out to you guys. I would have included any, so I included every one that I received.
Okay, so in total, you've collected 37 surveys.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Hugo.
Oh, thank you. That's what I needed to know. Thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Councilor Hugo.
Yes, John. So if we would go ahead with this water line out here, do we know the actual spread out of the respondents on, like, the size of the area that they're looking at for hookup on it? Like, would it be all the way from way down by Orkney area to where we wanted to go and north, or is it just kind of in a localized area where the potable water is actually very poor?
Through the reef, Councilor Hugo, I have plotted where they went, because in the survey we did ask to include the land locations. Through this presentation, I didn't include people's locations and stuff, but I do have it plotted, and it does run from the highway east, 3 Hills here, all the way down past Orkney, where there's interest, and it is mostly on that east side of that coulee. But like I said, it's spread out. I mean, there's different areas for different people, but there is a focused area in that area.
Councilor Christie.
Do you have a number of the rural residents that are hooked onto the Three Hills line that are on that right of way? Because there's several farms that are hooked on already.
Through the reef, Councillor Christie, I believe there is 12. Yeah, we just had that information not too long ago, so I think there's 12
Okay.
that are hooked onto that.
And basically they got it because they were on the right of way.
I believe they probably made a deal out, yes, Councillor Christie, yeah. But they wouldn't have been included inside this survey because they're north of that highway, and we only include people basically on that highway and south. So they're above that, so they wouldn't have gotten this.
Are there any other questions for Mr. McKiernan? No, it does not look that way. Oh, Councillor King.
I guess I'm wondering, we presented to them the cost of a riser. If we presented the information related to water service area tax, the cost of water, do you feel that the people who are responding yes would still be strong yeses because they just need water, period? And so no matter the cost, they would be willing to be in? How do you, I'm just looking for your feel sort of assessment of that.
Through the reef, so Councillor King, I think my feeling on it, going through the survey results, was the ones that said yes, were yes on pretty much everything. I think when you look at the results to question 4, a lot of them I think felt, yeah, I'm willing to pay what everyone else is paying. But if this goes to like 30 grand, I don't think that's fair, right, kind of thing. But just because you look at 10 grand to hook on another one, so why should I have to pay more, I think is maybe from the results, from what I see. Like a lot of them say, yeah, we want it. But then you see in that question 4B, would you be willing to pay more? And that jumps up pretty high to no, I wouldn't. But I think people would still be willing to pay, the ones that want it.
Councillor King.
So I guess in our original thinking process around this potential possibility of that project was we were pretty strong in our understanding, I guess that's the word I might want to use, that if we were even going to contemplate going in that direction, we needed pretty well a strong buy-in from almost everybody that's out there, just because of the limited number that are there. So in terms of viability, does this project work at half of those residents? It certainly didn't appear at the beginning of the concept that it would work if we only got a small portion of people to commit and be on the system. So I guess my question is there even a reasonable possibility that you could make this work with the number of responses that we've gotten?
Through the reef, Councillor King, we can make it work. But I kind of know where you're going a little bit. But when I plot out where the people are and stuff, there is quite a defined area with some offline people, like some people that are a little bit off and stuff like that, right? So I mean, it could become a smaller system, and then, you know, could be more of a, I was trying to think, it wouldn't be as big as like the Churchill that we just did, I don't believe, because the reservoir site wouldn't have to be a big, but you're putting in more new line, so I would probably think you're looking at least in that area, just for the respondents maybe that came. And that's also guessing because I don't know the topography of the area, so what else would have to go into that distribution system. So it's very tough to kind of say dollar-wise if it would be a, you know, something that would be considered. There's a lot of factors that have to be looked into it, but I would probably say you're looking at least at that Churchill project. But then again, I would have to look at the kilometers of pipeline, because that's where it will change that price.
So what's a reservoir cost to build? Roughly.
It was, just around a $2 million mark out at the Churchill site. And that
Okay.
was buying the land, putting up the building, doing the site work and all that kind of stuff. That one, we did have to raise up the one side of the site, so there was a lot of groundwork included, but yeah, that was all in with the reservoir tank as well as the pump house.
Yeah, and by the time you figure out the line, depending on how big the service area is, boy, if you could, yeah, I don't know what that cost would be, but I would suspect you'd probably be in at that $10 million for the reservoir and the lines.
Yeah, it depended on how far down we had to go, right, and
Yes.
how east and stuff, so that would definitely affect the cost.
Yeah, and you certainly couldn't divide that by 30.
No,
If you were to divide by the 79, then we're getting a little closer, but it's still,
quite an expensive thing, yeah.
yes. Because I do believe our other systems cost in that $60,000 range per riser.
I believe so, yeah. And then it was knocked down a bit, yeah.
Well, I kind of got that in the back of my mind, but. 79. So for that number to work out, it would still be pretty darn close to $5 million to build. And we're looking at probably double of that. So that would put the risers probably right in around that 120,000, 125,000 a piece. I'm just throwing some numbers out, but.
Just to follow up, if I could.
Just go ahead.
So I guess my concern would be that without serious buy-in in that area, we go in and we build a more limited system. And then, of course, once it's in place, everybody wants to add on. So if we're going to engineer and do a project out there, you really have to do it in a way that says, okay, we're committing to that area. We're going to build a system that's going to serve the area, and it's going to cost X number of dollars to do it. And so then you get half the people sign on. So now that becomes $250,000, $300,000 per actual customer. And it gets extremely difficult to justify. At 125,000 potential hookup, it's tough numbers to swallow. And so I can't see in any way, shape, or form that we'd go out there and say, we're going to build this tiny system to service X number of people who have specified they're interested, and we size everything for that, and then you know what happens is you got water lines, and then everybody wants, new people coming in want to tie on, and then you're hooped. So we're either going to build a system or we're not going to build a system. And I can't see us going out there and, running a garden hose a quarter of a mile to feed somebody. It just doesn't make sense. We have to put in size lines and whatever. So I would have liked to have seen a much stronger response to the survey from the area. And can I ask a question of Councillor Hugo? Jim, if I could ask you, do you have a feel for the residents out there, for the ones who didn't respond, as to why they didn't respond?
I tried to talk to as many people as I could from the highway down south, and pretty well everybody I had talked to said they were going to refill in the survey. So I'm not really too sure why we're sitting at 50% that didn't even bother filling it in. It kind of puzzles me, because a lot of them, even down south of the 27 highway, are very interested in water. But so, I've traveled around a bit and talked to quite a few people, and almost everybody told me they'd be very interested. And I kind of just wonder if it wasn't a lack of information possibly on what the water service area tax will cost them, or what the cost of water will be. $10,000 riser didn't seem to affect too many of them, because I know if we drill a well out here, it's going to cost us, 15 to 20,000. We're not guaranteed to get water here. So to be perfectly honest with you, Councillor King, I can't really say why we only had a 50% response rate.
Deputy Reeve McGee.
Thanks, Jim.
I'd like to add for my area, a comment to that. I believe our next topic on the agenda has kept that entire group from responding. They thought they were responding by the work they've done for the Orkney Water Co-op. So I know of 3 for sure who definitely said we didn't do the survey because we thought it was conflict to what we're doing with this other project. So when it comes to the Orkney area, I think that's might be quite a large number of why we're not handed in.
Councillor Kiever.
I'm really surprised at the, not the low number of surveys that were filled out, but the low number that said yes. You know what I mean? I thought it would have been 100% from what, you know, I mean, people I've talked to out there, it sounded like they hadn't had water for weeks. But a low number of surveys come back and it wasn't 100% even on the ones that came back. So I don't know. Maybe it isn't that big an issue. I don't know.
Not sure. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to ask Councillor Hugo, did you have a comment to make? I was seeing a hand every once in a while, or maybe.
No, I'm doing my physio exercises, so I'm stretching a little bit at times. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. Okay, Councillor Penner.
Just to follow up to what Glenn had to say there, John, you said you plotted it, and that's fine. Don't need to know what the names or anything. The no's, were they spread out too, or mostly in a certain area?
Through the Reeve, Councillor Penner, the no's were also kind of more or less clumped together as well. There was, like I said, a few outliers, just like the yeses over and about. But if you look at it, the majority of the no's were probably in a certain area, where most of the yeses were in a certain area.
Okay, thank you.
Through Mr. Reeve, there does seem.
Go ahead, Mr. Hogan.
There does seem to be some interest from council in that plotting. We do have that, and we can provide it for you. We would like to do that in confidence if we could, just because in the nature of how we've plotted that, you can easily ascertain who filled in the survey how, just by knowing who lives there, and that's the reason we haven't included that publicly for you today, because we did put the survey out. The information as to how specific individuals responded shouldn't be a matter of public domain, but we do have that information. So if council's interested in seeing that, we do have it and we can provide it. We just ask that we do so in confidence.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Hogan. Question was raised, do we want to do that now? If we do, then we will have to go into a closed session. Section 17 of FOIP. Would somebody care to make that motion? Yes, Councillor King.
So moved.
Okay, we've got a motion to move into closed session under Section 17 of FOIP. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, so we will move into closed session to